Hello again, beautiful beings. Welcome to the Joshua Tree National Park. Me and my dad have been camping all weekend, so we're gross and grimy and haven't showered in a while, but it's
Hello.
awesome. So this is my dad. His name is Mike. Also, he just got a numerology reading, and apparently, this is what I hear, he has 2 master numbers, and he's apparently, okay, this is what I'm hearing, apparently he's super psychic and very intuitive, and it's super impressive that he's got these 2 master numbers, 11 and 22, for those of you who know numerology. Anyway, we're still working on it. It's a work in progress for sure.
I didn't want to tell you, but the numerology came out and let you know about it.
Yeah. Oh, you don't want to tell me
No.
about your crazy psychic abilities?
Exactly. I was just keeping undercover.
Oh, right. Yeah. You're holding space for me. I see.
Was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I can move on.
I'm pretty sure the numerologist said, wow, it makes a lot of sense that your daughter is Elizabeth. Pretty sure she said that.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Yeah.
I'll give you some credit.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we have pre-taken your questions. For those of you watching this, it's pre-recorded this morning, and then I released it later today because there's literally 0 service. So just know this isn't necessarily live, but it's recorded a couple hours before you guys are seeing it. So we're going to go through your questions, and some of your questions, both me and my dad are going to answer together. And then there's some questions that are a little high level that I'm going to answer. And he's still working on that kind of stuff. But yeah, so great questions, guys. Thank you so much. Let's dive right into it.
And thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Everyone wanted to meet Papa April, so...
Papa April, huh?
Yeah, Papa April.
All right, let's give her a go.
Okay. All right, so the first question comes in. A couple of you asked us the same question, so I thought it was great to include. This comes through from Kim and also Raw Candy Bar. Okay, so my question is, how did your father react when he found out about your gifts, and how did he best support you? Second question, very similar. How do you advise parent to parent on how to help your child that has such powerful gifts, and how to help steer them? I think this is in general a really great question, because there's so many starseed kids being born these days, and my dad was one of my biggest supports as a kid. So Dad, how did you best support me in having those gifts as a kid?
Well, it was interesting when you were growing up. It was just noticing the intuitiveness that came out from your everyday life and living in around family and around friends, your interactions, how you knew things before they happened, how you were able to start seeing, spirits and start seeing unusual things when you were 3, 4, or 5. That a normal 3 or 4 or 5-year-old would not be observing or saying or seeing. And instead of not disparaging you from not seeing those things, I encouraged you as far as what did you see, what did it look like, so I kind of drew those things out. And kind of supported you instead of saying, you didn't see what you saw, it was just your imagination. Yeah. So I would encourage parents, and they don't have to be believers, but they would have to kind of support you in a way that I did Liz as far as growing up, and kind of encouraging her and drawing those visions out and trying to get her to elaborate and be descriptive in what she saw, and then continue a conversation as such. So I didn't shut her down. I just kind of drew it out of her as far as those things. And and it's interesting when you say gifts. I didn't really think of it as a gift. I thought it was just very intuitive. It just very and the parent would think you're highly intelligent, right? So. But then as time went on, it became more than that, because it became more spiritual in a sense. As far as advising parent to parent and how to help a child with such powerful gifts, how do you steer them? You would want to, and I think, is that leading on to this next question, or is this part of the same one here?
Yeah, that's part of the same one, yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I would react to that. I would just help draw that out and encourage any child at any age, you know, and if you know, your parents don't do that, but you do have the gifts, then you would want to continue developing that and recognizing that in yourself, not to think that you're strange or weird or anything, right? So yeah, that's how I did it with Liz, and then you know, and then she grew from there.
Yeah. And also, part of the numerology reading with my dad was that he has very healing hands. And it's funny because my stepmom was listening at the same time to the reading, and she's like, oh yeah, we all know Mike has very healing hands. And when we were kids, he used to do a lot of energetic healing, like hands-on healing. And I always felt that, you know, I always felt so much better in his presence just because he did that energy work as an engineer before anyone was ever, you know, even thinking about energy work. So that's also, I feel like you supported me a lot in not even talking. I mean, I think the next step with parents would be talk about, hey, I'm healing you, or I'm doing energy work on you, you know? That would probably be the next step to that. But you were also very supportive energetically, even without communicating what you were doing.
Yeah, and you don't, and your parents don't have to be part psychic. They don't have to have those abilities. They just have to believe and encourage
and support.
Yeah, and you know, and that's what I would recommend any parents out there to do with their gifted child.
Yep. And then, so our next question kind of leads from the first, which is now the opposite. And this came through with many people. A lot of you members asked this question. So we've got Stephanie, Joy, Savannah, all asked the same question. So I just kind of put it into one paragraph here. I would love your dad to answer our question. What does he think is the best way we can communicate to our parents that we have had a spiritual awakening and even psychic abilities? And a lot of you have been also, you know, saying that your parents think that you're crazy. They think that you're joining a cult because you're watching my videos or some other spiritual teacher videos. So I'll answer that question first. Yeah, honestly, I think, you know, it's a fine line between being who you are around your parents and pushing them a little bit to be uncomfortable so that they can also awaken and open up. You need to realize that you signed your contracts to be a child to your parents in your family for a reason. So if you were to close yourself off, you're not doing anyone justice, not yourself, not your parents. I mean, they're contracted to have, you know, a super psychic or really beautiful soul, old soul child like you. So just kind of keeping that in mind.
Yeah, that's interesting because as much as you're contracted to be for them to be your parents, they, even though they don't know it or realize it, have been contracted themselves to be your parents. Right. So the trick is with this, and it's a great question, you don't come out and say, hey, mom, dad, I'm a psychic. Hey, mom, dad, I'm a channeler. Or, hey, I've got these special... Yeah. It depends on the level of acceptance that you can recognize in your parents. So I would suggest don't come out and actually say anything direct. I would say use your gifts in your everyday life. Okay. So if you're an intuitive, you know, kind of expose your gifts slowly with your parents to say, so you can have your parents recognize your gifts without you having to tell them a little bit along the way. And again, it depends on how accepting your parents are. So if you say, hey, I think this is probably what's going to happen, or this is, you use your gifts to kind of suggest something to, and then it actually happens, and then just have your parents turn around and say, hey, how did you know that? Or, hey, that's great. That's pretty cool, you know? And so you kind of actually educate them along the way without actually coming out and saying that you knew this stuff because you are gifted, which you already knew. Yep. But and this is how you expose it to them. So slowly but surely, without having to come out and right out and say it. Because, you know, your parents' support, whether they're in the space or not, is important. And if you're feeling that they're not would be acceptant of it, I say expose your gifts slowly within your life, within your family life, and then just do things that kind of make them look at you and think, wow, how'd you know that? And just continue doing that a little bit at a time, and then it becomes a point where it'll be, wow, you are gifted. You must have something, right? And let them come to you with that, just by exposing them to your gifts in that kind of way.
Yeah. I'll add to that and say as well, like, labels are very triggering, especially if you have Christian parents or you have Catholic parents, you know. I mean, they might say you're speaking to the devil, right? Or you're joining a cult, you know, like some of you mentioned. And so I think that it's really important, like, just like my dad said, you know, don't put a label on it. Don't come right out and say that this is who you are. You know, be who you are around them and allow them to come to you. So I think I think that's really great advice. This next question comes from Cynthia, and this is a question that I'm going to answer. And if you have anything you want to say about this, go ahead and chime in.
Sure.
Okay, so Cynthia, if our spirit guides are also learning, is there any way we can help and guide them, or is it strictly a leader-follower dynamic? So I said in my last video related to spirit guides that the funniest thing is that our spirit guides are learning just as much on the other side as we are learning here on planet Earth, right? So they're not this almighty, you know, godlike figure who knows everything about your life. Your spirit guides are learning too, and like I kind of mentioned, taking care of us is kind of like their 9-to-5 job. Like, they're still living their life over in the 8th dimension as a Palladian, you know. Their whole existence doesn't, exist just around taking care of us. So your question, Cynthia, great question. How do we then help them learn their lessons? And more often, it's really wild. More and more often, I've been doing readings for clients where I'm saying, oh, wow, like, you know, your spirit guide really struggles with this, and you're really learning how to overcome this situation. So you two have contracts, because just as much as they are teaching you and helping to guide you, you are helping to teach and guide them. So as far as what you can do to help and guide them, the only thing that I would recommend is just ask them, hey, you know, Palladian spirit guide, what do you need from me? How can I best support you? And then maybe something comes up. Maybe you have a breakthrough. Maybe you want to share that breakthrough with your guide. But typically there really isn't too much that you need to do to help your spirit guides learn, because as you experience, as you live your life, they are learning just as much from you as you are from them, because there's that divine harmony between two souls, right? So it's pretty straightforward, but yeah, really, really great question. It's never a leader-follower dynamic with your spirit guides. Never. It's always teacher-student, right? As you are the teacher, you are the student. As you are the student, you are the teacher. So great question. Awesome. Let's move over to Krista Talbot. Hi, EA, love you. I want to know, how many lifetimes have you and your dad been together? And in what way? Like, have you ever been father-son or perhaps siblings? I've heard you talk about past lifetimes together, and I want to hear more. Great.
Well,
do you remember a couple of our past lives? I mean, throughout the years, we've looked into a lot of them.
It's been varied. Yeah, it's never been always the same father-daughter.
Yeah.
It'd be like brother-sister. It could be, you know, brother. We pulled some past life oracle cards last night, and we asked the deck, right, the past life deck, what do we need to know about our past lifetimes? And we pulled a really interesting one, which was the male-female card, which was it's so unobvious, right? If you pull like a sailor card, it's like, okay, cool, I died as a sailor and there's something there. But the male-female one, it came up that typically my dad and I have been a lot of the time like brothers or like father-son, like very masculine. We both have that like I get a lot of my masculine traits from him, which is good because we're both entrepreneurs and inventors and problem solvers, you know. And so it's so easy for us to be male, you know, we get shit done, you know, we're just kind of going for it. But this whole male-female dynamic, you know, father-daughter is really interesting. I think I was always called daddy's girl as a kid because I would just like, you know, I would get whatever I wanted. You were cute then.
hey now, all right. But yeah, and so the card that came up last night was, you're learning how to be more vulnerable and surrender a little bit more, just a little bit more. And and then I'm also learning how to be vulnerable and surrender as a female. So I'm teaching you divine femininity. I'm teaching myself divine femininity by being a female. So that just came up. But the one lifetime that I think have we been on the Galactic Federation, Palladians? I really forget. I feel like we've channeled that.
I forget too.
Well, my dad's been Palladian a lot, so he's got that humanitarian, very compassionate. We just had to spend like half an hour saving a butterfly from the tent before we took it down, so should tell you a little bit about him.
Yeah, well,
you got it.
Every life is important on this planet, animal
yes,
or any creature. We share the same space.
Yeah.
So we've got to respect life.
One of the past lifetimes that come up always really strongly between the two of us is where we were both Indigenous brothers and we were hunters together. And I want to say that it was Native American Indigenous, because I just remember forest, like really heavily dense forest.
It's starting to come back.
And I think that you were my older brother at that time, and I really looked up to you. I feel like you ended up dying in that lifetime.
Yeah, I was just recalling that one. Yeah.
I feel like you ended up getting shot with an arrow in battle or something, and that was really painful for me. Super interesting. But we were always like nomads. We would go out in the canoe, we would go down the river, we would camp in the, So when we get together, even father-daughter, it's always an adventure. Like, what can we do? Like road trip, adventure, whitewater rafting we've done before. So we bring that back a lot. Yeah,
and how many lifetimes? I think a lot. I think in this human life of ours and yours, you surround yourself and you come back into you surround yourself with other past life people that you were with, to, like Liz keeps saying, is to resolve your past life karma, to actually work with each other. So all the people that you expose yourself to, and your friends and your family, siblings and others, you've been with in the past lives, and that's so that just keeps coming back until you resolve your karmic debt and things of that nature. So we've been together forever and a day. Spiritually, we're ancient souls.
Yeah, a lot of teacher student. Like, I'm typically the teacher.
Not this type.
I'm kidding. Well, this is where I get my competition from. My competitiveness. It's all him. So that really comes out strongly.
Anyways, moving on. Let's go. Okay.
Moving on. All right. Cool. All right. So next question from V. Hi, Elizabeth. I've been wondering how our spirit guides perceive us. Do they float around observing, or are they watching from a distance, maybe like from a screen? And can they always read our minds, or only when we speak to them? This is a great question. I'll answer this, and if you have anything you want to add, you can. So how I perceive spirit guides, right? So I think the traditional way of perceiving angels, spirit guides, is they're in heaven and they're looking down at us, and actually that's not too far off. They are in different dimensions, so in a sense they are kind of above us, but in the astral realm, very similar to ghosts and spirits and loved ones who have passed on. They are able to read our thoughts, all right? But don't get freaked out and think that they're reading all of your thoughts all the time and judging you, because spirit guides do not judge you at all. Even a murderer or a serial killer, they will not judge you. That is your path. They know that is your path, and it is what it is. So there's never any judgment. Just know that, even if they do read your thoughts. They can only read your thoughts once you give them permission to read your thoughts, and that is when you call them in with your intentions, right? So, if you're asking for healing, if you're asking for DNA upgrades, you can call upon them and they will be there. And sometimes, very, very rare, will they pop into the room. And typically when they pop into the room, same thing with a ghost or a spirit or a loved one, you'll feel them, right? So all of a sudden, you're hand making pierogies and you feel your baba, that's because she always used to make pierogies. And so you can feel that essence, that energy in the room. It's very rare for a spirit guide, especially interdimensional guides, to pop into the room. It takes a lot of energy from them to come to this third dimension frequency.
Low vibration,
yeah, if we really need them, they will be here for us in the same frequency, in the same room, but typically that's not needed. That's why I always say, and that's why I really pushed in the last video that if you're talking to an 8th dimensional Palladian, we have to meet them at their level, and we're here in the 3rd dimension, so we need to raise our vibration at least to 5th dimension frequency so that we can meet, you know, in a harmonious place, because it's very difficult. It takes a lot of energy for them to come all the way down here. So that's kind of how they perceive us. Like I said, we have to call them in first, right? The law of non-intervention kind of restricts them from stepping in anytime they want to. It's really totally up to us.
Yeah, no, and I think let's not forget that our guides are here to guide us, right? They actually know our life path, and then they kind of do a check to check along the way that you're going right now in your life path, and sometimes they'll say, hey, you're kind of stuck in spinning your wheels in a certain circumstance and situation, and they'll look to correct that and actually try to steer you in the life path that you've actually blueprinted for yourself when you came into this world, right? Because you have lessons to learn. They know what those lessons are, and because we live our day-to-day lives by eating, going to work, and you're so an automatic pilot, you forget what your life lessons are to be, right? And they are really, the angels on your shoulders to say, hey, you've been stuck in this, for 5 years now. Let's move you along, and that's where Liz is saying you call upon them and actually do a check in your life to say, Am I on my path?
Yeah.
Have I wandered? And they
yeah.
really help you. That's what's in their name. Spirit guides.
Yeah.
They guide you to accomplish your life path. So they're there to help you, and they'll be watching over you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So next question here from Outdoor Girl. Perfect name for this setting, really. Oh yeah. Did you and or your dad find DMT as a useful tool / ceremony to connect, especially when learning and gaining abilities back? Okay, so I'll just preface this with whoever has not seen my psychedelic video will not know basically what this is. So DMT, dimethyltryptamine, it's a natural chemical released in the pineal gland, and it basically shoots you into, other realms, other dimensions. It's kind of like a super intense psychedelic trip in a lot of ways. And so back in university, I told my dad to watch the documentary, The Spirit Molecule. And it was all these scientists who were all talking about dimethyltryptamine and what it's like to experience that in a clinical setting, but they call it the spirit molecule. It connects you to the cosmos, right? So then after my dad watched that video, he's like, oh, how can I do this? And I said, well, I got you covered. I'm giving people these experiences. So you drove from, I think, Waterloo or Cambridge to Hamilton and went to my dorm, university residence and had a DMT experience. So what about you, Dad? Like, the one thing that he said right after the experience was, I didn't go as far as I know I could have. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
And so, but you still had an experience. So do you feel like that opened you up? Do you feel like that changed you? Do you feel like you were ready for that?
No, I think it, I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was quite a psychedelic experience. And I don't know if I was kind of like resisting to let myself go.
Yeah,
that could be
so.
part of it, right?
To
do a full-on experience with that. That definitely is, a method to just go full-on release and experience the universe truly. But I'm as an engineer by trade, I always kind of preface anything I do in the spiritual world too, with questions. I kind of question everything. I kind of make sure, is this for real? Is this kind of like, so I always do double checks, and so sometimes that holds me back in experiences like this.
Yeah.
So once I went through that experience with Liz, then I felt it was safe and it was okay to go ahead and do. Then you can open yourself up to the entire experience of the universe that DMT allows you to do. The other part of the question was, to connect. I don't know if that was to connect with Liz or to connect with the universe. Definitely, it's a useful tool to connect with the universe.
Yeah.
With Liz and I, we've always connected, so we've always had that special relationship. So, and then as Liz was saying, DMT is a useful tool. I mean, it's not necessary. I mean, we've grown up, and Liz has grown up, and with us, and that was just something else that is another tool that if you want to experience is something that's you could do as well, but not necessary to continue on with your spiritual lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you bring up a good point, which is you have to make sure that you're ready to full surrender. You know what I mean? Right. Whether it be ayahuasca, whether it be magic mushrooms, whether it be DMT, but also being curious is also a good place to be too when you're looking to have these other experiences, because I'm glad that you had that experience when I was kind of giving those experiences out. It's once in a lifetime, you know what I mean? So I think that that's pretty cool. And you know what? I don't know why it just kind of sparked, this memory, but so when I was a kid, we had this book, and it's this book where my dad wrote down all of the silly things that I would say, and I'm now curious. Do you remember that? I'm now curious of what that really was, and I'll kind of give my explanation of it. So we called it the Silly Dumb Book, I think.
Or no, the Silly Liz book or something. Anyways, yeah.
And
go ahead.
It was all of the weird things that I would say. Lizisms, yeah. All of the weird things that I would say that you guys would just laugh at. They laughed at me a lot, okay?
Wow, not in a harmful way, right? It was in a more of a family kind of like...
No, it was fun. But I would say things. I don't even know. Like, if we had the book, it would be so much fun to read through it. But it's like, I think that I'm so awkward maybe being human, or I don't understand. Like, one of the things was we were in Mexico celebrating... No, we were in Mexico.
Right. It was over Christmas, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I basically asked, and I was like maybe 12 at the time, I asked, is the same day of Christmas in Mexico the same day, of Christmas in, say, America or Canada, right? And they thought it was hilarious that I would ask that because I was old enough to know. But those are the things. Like, it's just like, I feel like as a kid, like, my mind just didn't catch on to some pretty obvious things, and that's what made them so funny.
Right. Yeah, and I think they were really innocent things. And it was just like, trying to experience the world as a human and possibly saying,
this is weird.
Trying to figure things out, right? And
getting made fun of. Well, I'm trying so hard to figure it out.
Not at all. There were just so many of them. We had to create a book, but it was a lot of fun. We enjoyed.
A lot of fun,
yeah.
That's so funny. Okay, cool. So we've got another question here from Miss Beck, 1982. Hi Elizabeth, you mentioned in your spirit guides video that we're kind of like a 9 to 5 for our spirit guides. So I was curious, can they make mistakes in the guidance that they give us, like how we sometimes make mistakes in our job? That's a great question. And yes, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, like I said before, they're not all knowing, they're not these godlike figures. They could be in other dimensions, but it doesn't mean that they are any better than us, right? So I'll give you an example of this. Your spirit guides will tell you information, especially if you're going to a psychic, right? Your spirit guides will tell you information that is not necessarily information that is the answer of what you're looking for, but it's information that will guide you on a path. Like, say, for example, okay, if one of my clients was like, should I be with this guy? And I consult your guides, and the guides are like, this is what you need for right now. And all of a sudden the guy cheats on you, and you're dealing with the trauma of him, cheating on you, right? That's an experience that you needed to go through. And sometimes I'll have clients come back to me say, why would my guides tell me that? Why wouldn't my guides tell me that he was cheating on me and that this wasn't good and that I should just empower myself and walk away? And I said, your guides tell you what you need to know right now so that you can follow along your contracts and your blueprints. So whether you understand that that's a mistake or that was wrong of them to do that or not, right? However you perceive that. So that's one aspect of it, is they give you what you need so that you can be aligned to your contracts, good, bad, or ugly. And then can they make mistakes in giving you guidance? 100%. Every once in a while, I will communicate with spirit guides and they will be a split 50-50, right? And like 50% of them is like, yeah, they should really move. The other 50% is like, no, you got to stay and deal with your problems. Usually they're very cohesive about giving you the answer and this is what it is and this is what you need to know. But every once in a while it's 50-50 and I'm kind of amused because I'm like, you guys can't figure this out? Like, come on, like get your shit together. But yeah, so 100% guides can make mistakes. Their guidance is not the end all to be all. I always say in my videos as well as with my clients in my sessions, look, here are the 2 options in your future, or the many options in your future. It's always up to you to choose. You always have the free will. Whether your guides say you should eat more bananas, you can say I don't like bananas and not eat them, so that's kind of how I perceive it.
Yeah, what a great question. I mean, guides make mistakes. I tell you, it's your life path changes every day based on the decision you make every day. Yep. It really is. I mean, if you've ever gone to a psychic or had a channel done with somebody else, it's only as good as the day they gave you that reading, because as soon as you step out of that reading and you start making decisions and choices in your life, all of a sudden, if the psychic said, hey, you're gonna be doing this and in a year from now or 6 months from now you're gonna be moving or you're gonna make whatever, and it doesn't happen, well, it depends on what choices you made between then and 6 months from now, because your life path is really decided on you and the choices you make, and that's free will. That's what free will do for you. And that's good, bad, or indifferent.
Blessing and a curse, exactly. Yeah. Cool. Good. All right. So another question here from Bendis. Also, guys, I know that everyone's watching this and really enjoying this content. But if you want to actually ask me questions every week, then you can sign up and be a member. So these are members only questions. And then after 24 hours, this video is going to be members only. So if a lot of people ask me, oh, where did that Q&A video go? It's now just on the members page. So just keep in mind that that's how you kind of ask questions. Okay, so Bendis. Hi, Elizabeth. My question is, how do I heal my relationship with my father? I would love to hear also from your dad. Okay, so I'll start with this.
Okay.
So healing relationships and dynamics with your parents, this is tough. It's a really big concept.
It's an open-ended question. Yeah. It just depends on what's been damaged, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But anyways, so it's the approach, right?
Yeah. So there's many different approaches to this, but I always like to say that there's got to be a moment of blow up, explosion, conversation, typically because a lot of the time between parent and child relationships, a lot of things just go unsaid, right? And so that'll build and that'll build and that'll build throughout the years, and then it gets awkward and there's tension and there's this unspoken, elephant in the room, and eventually you finally say, you know what, Dad, I'm gay, or you know what, Dad, I'm spiritual, or what have you, right? Whatever that thing is that's been unspoken. Or you know what, Dad, I didn't like the way that you treated me in childhood because you were an alcoholic, or what have you, right? So eventually that communication has to be said, and typically that's not going to be met very well with your parent because, closed off, stubborn, what have you. That's why the conversation hasn't been spoken of because of that fear there. So basically, how do you heal? You got to bring that shit up. You will not be able to heal. And I hear it every single day with all of my clients who say, my father just passed away and he was sick for a while and I was never able to say what I wanted to say. Or, my mother has Alzheimer's and I want to confront all this stuff from childhood. I want to bring closure to that relationship, but now I can't because she's not even in her body. She's not even aware of those conversations. So, don't be scared of the repercussions of speaking your truth, because it needs to be said in order to heal. You have to bring this up. You have to have that moment of explosion in order to bring things back to neutrality. And typically it does create sort of that explosion energy in order to bring neutrality back to it. So bring it up. Don't hide yourself anymore.
Yeah, and I would think as a dad, it always comes down to, and this is a wide open question, because everybody's circumstances could be, at a high level of severity to just a couple of minor things that happen that you guys aren't speaking to each other or what have you. Yeah. But it all comes down to the same thing: is take away blame. Okay. Yeah. You've got to come to, and because you're asking this question, you feel, I can tell it's important to you to heal your relationship with your father. Yeah. Something's happened there. And that's important to you. So you got to take, if he's blaming you for something, you gotta show him love, send him light, bring the warmth back into the relationship. If he's done something to you that obviously could have been bad, just take away all blame. Say, look, I'm going to start from ground zero. Let's not blame each other. Let's just, what's done is done. Past is past. You can't take it away. But in order to move forward, you want to say, look, Dad, I forgive you. I want to move forward. I love you. And then I always say, when you're dealing in a relationship, just say, what you've said is hurtful to me. I'd like to understand where that's coming from. Yeah. Sometimes it's not as easy to do, but if you're looking for a way to start, I would start by forgiveness, which is hard because it could have been something awful that's happened to you. Yeah. But because you're asking this question, if anybody else is asking this question because you want to heal it, just come from a position of love and forgiveness and say, look, we've said bad and awful things to each other. I don't want this to go on because you're too important to me. Yeah, Let's just let it go, because otherwise it's just going to eat away at you. I bet you it's going to eat away at your dad too, because if you're missing that relationship, there's been some times in Liz and ours relationships and my son's relationships that, we haven't spoken to each other for a while, and that was terrible, and we were both feeling awful. And we had to come to terms and just came back together and developed a loving relationship by understanding those positions in each other and saying, let's, this is not doing anybody any good. Let's move on. Yeah. You're too important to me in my life. Yeah. I want you to be a part of my life, and just be honest and emotional about it. So
I want to add to that too, and just say that so a lot of you are like, okay, well, I'm going to forgive my parents for whatever, but how, right? How do you forgive them? So the number one thing for me, especially with this guy over here, is understanding that they grew up in a different generation, right, than you. You could be you could be in their generation, right. But they grew up in a different generation, and understanding that they were never taught and given the tools that you have access to right now. And so there has to be compassion there, rather than, I can't believe you never said you loved me. I can't believe you never, that's the blame portion, right? But you can't blame them if you understand that they're literally coming from a place of lack. They were never given that unconditional love and support as a kid. They were never shown how to work with your emotions in an emotionally intelligent way. They lack the tools that you might currently have. Right. So you can't come from a place and say, you didn't give me what I needed, when they didn't know how to give you. Yeah. It doesn't mean that they didn't want to. They didn't know how. And so there's a compassion there and understanding that they were just lacking something. And I guarantee you that you're lacking something that your kids need, or what have you, that eventually they're going to teach you about, and you got to be open to listening to that as well, right? So
yeah, it's interesting. Something just came to me, I don't know, out of this conversation. Again, you triggered it. Any of you starseed children out there, any we call everybody gifted, but parents in my generation, and then my parents, and my parents came from the World War II, for heaven's sakes. to raise a starseed child, to raise gifted children. For me, I've been always interested in this spirits and in past lives, and from early on, and that's quite unusual for parents. So you need to appreciate, as a starseed child or as a gifted child, that your parents, could be totally, no pun intended, alien to them, because that makes it a bit of a challenge for you to come forward, but don't let that stop you. Okay, you've got a lot of channels like Liz here out there. You've got a lot of information, social media, good, bad, or indifferent. You can go and cultivate yourself to come forward. But anyways, that was just with respect to parenting and our generation of bringing up children like yourself.
Absolutely.
And how to do that and how to approach your parents with that. So and we answered that earlier on, but that was that just kind of tweaked me to kind of just add to it a little bit.
I feel like you giving me a past life regression at 16, like that was very unusual for the time, right? And
didn't you steal all my books, my psychic books, and my kind of I thought you snuck them.
I didn't steal your psychic books. No, I stole your past life regression. I copied his past life regression book.
She took all my notes too.
It was great. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey. Thanks. Yeah. Right. Okay.
What, do you want a royalty or something?
Okay. Let's keep going.
But one more thing I want to mention too is the other thing too that comes up with the generational stuff is obviously, that was very unusual for me as a kid. But then moving forward, my generation having kids, obviously this is all accessible and it's much more open.
Wow.
But Bubba, his mom, super psychic, had premonitions and dreams and stuff like that all the time.
And she didn't even know what that was.
My aunt, his sister, also super psychic, but scared, right? So we also have to bring up this energy of fear within these generations of they could be super psychic or very in tune, but they had an experience where it was very fearful. Yeah. I think my mom's the same way of, she saw her great-grandfather at some point, got super freaked out, and then she really shut off, And so that's also something to be aware of as well is, you don't know it, but your grandparents, great-grandparents, your aunt could all be, aunt, uncle, could all be very in tune, just like you are, because it comes through the lineage, right? We've got this DNA, this higher percentage of Palladian DNA and other DNA in us, and it freaked them out because there was persecution after persecution, generation after generation being persecuted for having these abilities.
Well, I mean, you can go back to the,
witch burning.
The day and age of witches and work, like you were accused of being a witch because you had a gifted, you were gifted healer, you were gifted shaman or what have you, and everybody freaked out, and all the good you were doing, you got burned at the stake. I mean, it's just so
the protection.
It's humanity's got a long way to go, but you're the next generation of getting us there and moving us along.
Absolutely.
And awakening.
Yeah, for sure.
And that leads us into the next question.
Cool. Okay, so I have no idea how to even say this name.
It's a Q.
Quetzalivs. You know what? I feel like the person just button mashed when they put their name in.
Go ahead.
Anyway, okay. Yay, I'm so excited for this. I'm new to the awakening, so bear with me. My question is, how can you tell if you're connecting with spirit guides and not a dark entity? I think this is a great question. Is there an affirmation I can say at night before bed or at any time? I hope this makes sense. Thanks for everything. You've helped me change my life. Fantastic. Okay, so this is a good question because honestly, people get stuck with this all the time. Is they're starting to open their energies, things feel very good, they raise their vibration, but you're so innocent in a way when you get into these other realms, in the astral realms, that you end up just kind of attracting anything, right? And so for a long time, my wife Nat, she would be in bed and she was like, oh yeah, like I think a dark entity entered the room last night. I'm like, oh wow, like how did that happen? She's like, I don't know, I was just trying to connect and I was just asking for anything to connect with me. I'm like, you're asking for anything to connect with you? What are you doing? Are you a Ouija board? Like, come on.
Yeah.
So a lot of in the spiritual awakening process, you just open up the energies, you hope that anything comes through. That is not the way to do it, okay? So intentions. What I always say, what I used to say at the beginning, now it just kind of comes natural, so I don't have to say it every time, but I used to always say something like, I wish to connect to my spirit guides to heal my physical body for the highest good of all involved. I always end every intention with, for the highest good of all involved, for their highest good, for my highest good, okay? The other thing too is an affirmation. If you have any sort of, if you feel a negative energy or entity come into the room, you can set the intention of, anything that is not serving my highest good, I do not allow in or is not allowed in my space or what have you. So it's always about the highest good for everyone, and just being aware of that. And I just want to say one more thing about that, which is sometimes dark entities, and I know I might get a lot of flack for this, but I do believe it, sometimes dark entities are in our life for the highest good, to teach us something. So I want to say that when you say for the highest good, if it needs to happen, if it's supposed to happen, if it's in your contracts, it will happen, and it will happen for your highest good so that you can learn something from it, is truly what I believe. So always just setting the intentions of being very clear on who you want to connect to, why you want to connect to them, and always just having that vibration of I'm connecting for the highest good, of all involved, sort of thing. So that's important, right?
Yeah, that's when you want to invite them to connect with you, that's the intention you want to set. Only the highest vibrational beings with all good intentions, and then that eliminates any of the dark entities you might be fearing. Because actually I had the same question when I was going through this myself. Affirmations are great. Positive affirmations, you cannot have enough of them. I have some that I say every day, like for example, here's one that I use quite often. It's called, every day and in every way I am better and better. And that is just a self-affirmation to myself to keep, and there's plenty out there that you can have. Before bed's great. Actually, you can ask the universe a question before you go to sleep at night, and you've heard that you can come up with the answer when you wake up. Things of that nature, I feel that is totally valid to do that. And then that actually kind of brings forth your intuitiveness. It brings forth a gift. And when we say starseed children and everybody has this gift. It's not, it's more pronounced in others than it's dormant in other people. And it's more pronounced in other people that have the gifts that are using them day to day, or that they've cultivated that, right? So everybody's got the gift. It's just a matter of, and this is one way that you can actually start cultivating it yourself, is by these affirmations, asking these questions, bringing forth your guides to help you guide your life in a more positive and meaningful way. Sorry.
And one more thing I would add to that is, every once in a while, a spirit guide will come through and you're like, oh, this is an angel. Okay, great, let's go with this. Or you just hear a voice and you just do whatever the voice tells you to do. And, once again, discernment is so key here. I had a client of mine pop into a group session a month ago, and he's like, my spirit guides, they told me to take this course last year and it was awful and I spent $30,000 doing it. And I said, no way. Your spirit guides would never tell you to spend money. They would never tell you to do anything. They would literally never tell you to do anything. They would guide you or hint at you. And so I tuned into it, and it turns out it was this dark entity that was, manipulating this guy. And so it comes down to discernment and vibration. So instead of just saying, the spirit guide's like, oh, go pick that, bush over there, instead of just saying, okay, cool, I'll go do that because you're higher or better or whatever than me, instead saying, okay, who are you? what's your purpose? What's your reason in my life? Like, how do you feel? How do you connect with that guide? So really focusing on the vibration of the guide. When you do start to connect with them, it's a vibrational thing. And now, I mean, I can, I don't really get confronted too often by, dark entities, but it's a very easy, association for me, just feeling the vibration and getting confident in that feeling. So last question here, from Brenda. How does your father represent the divine masculine in your life, or does he? That's a great question.
Yeah. That was a question for you, or for
yeah,
go ahead.
No, he actually really does. I get a lot of my divine masculine traits from him, good, bad, and ugly. And
there's no ugly.
I mean, sometimes you're stubborn.
No bad.
Sometimes you're really
that's not ugly. That's not even bad. That's just like that's being like really
you're supposed to be psychic.
Yeah, I am. That's okay, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So yeah, no. I mean, I've definitely always looked up to my dad in that very divine masculine way. He's always been a creator, always very inventive. He's an engineer by trade, but he's also always been very spiritual. Like, he's got a really good balance, despite his stubbornness. Okay, sometimes, because he's definitely very stubborn. And I take on those traits from him too. Like, instead of confronting a situation and verbally communicating about it, he just shuts down. I do the same thing now in my adult life, and I roll my eyes and I blame you every time it happens. No, I don't, because I choose that. But yeah, I mean, even in childhood, like, he was always super, super active. Like, I don't know what happened there, but got drafted to the NHL. Baseball, like, very, very, very athletic. So definitely always looked up to him. Very competitive. Oh my goodness.
A little bit. Just a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, divine masculine. So.
Yeah, divine masculine. So definitely he represents the divine masculine. He's been a really great, like, really awesome father, honestly. And
wow, it's Father's Day too, and you're saying all this stuff. Wow, is that great?
Isn't that coincidental?
That is. Great question.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so just really, like, I just felt like you were always a provider, always a protector, always someone that I could lean on. So definitely really represents the divine masculine. And now I'm teaching you just as much as you really taught me. And now we're kind of, we're having that balance, which I think is really beautiful. So yeah. And I hope that I kind of represent more of that divine feminine in your life as well.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes. I am very blessed to have you in my life, and
to whip you into shape.
Right.
Anyway.
But I don't know. Any last comments or thoughts?
Well, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
I hope this goes well with everybody that's watching, and they've received some, good information about, a parent relationship with a gifted child, and how to. I mean, we obviously didn't talk about everything, but hopefully enough for people to understand what the relationship's like. I mean, there are challenges, right? And we spoke about that a little bit. And really, it's communication. It could be subtle, and and then the worst thing you can do is be fearful of your gifts and be fearful of who you are. Don't shut off. Even if you've got to self-educate and teach yourself how to bring these gifts to your forefront and to your maximum potential, then do it. Just don't, if you're in a relationship with your parents that aren't acceptant, don't let that turn you off. Okay. So as from a parent to star children out there, to other parents as well, it's not strange and unusual. It might be something that you want to just cultivate in your children and be understanding of. So,
and it's getting just to be more and more normal, which is nice.
Right.
And like I was saying earlier, it's like I hear it all the time that after your parent has crossed over or taken that exit point, it's like you really wish that you said the things that you wanted to say, you know. So don't hold back. As a child, don't hold back, and as a parent, don't hold back, you know. And I think more and more these days, you know, parents are getting more open about being affectionate with their children and telling them that they love them and that they're proud of them. I mean, you tell me that every day.
Yeah, I do. Psychically, I do.
Yeah.
But no, it's you're doing extremely well, and you're getting the message out. You're helping people awaken, answering a lot of questions that a lot of people have and had nowhere else to go, and found you, and that was quite critical. I mean, I don't know how often I've seen comments about you changed my life, and I'm so proud of you.
Aww.
So
thanks, Poppy.
You're welcome, sweetie.
Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.